Okay, so here is the full entire story and deal with the Comp XE262 AH cams I put in my 2003 LX Sport Crown Victoria. So I wanted to go with a mild cam. I didn't want something too crazy because it's my daily driver. I had to go in to do timing chain, so I just wanted something I could throw in easily. Um, did my research, and it seemed like the most popular cam was the XE262AH for the Crown Vic guys who wanted something mild. You can throw it in with a factory tune. I haven't had it dyno tuned yet, factory torque converter, all that stuff, and you'll be good to go. So I threw it in, got it all done. There was a really bad ticking noise, and I figured it was just the lifters because that's what a lot of people were saying. Well, not lifters, the lash adjusters, which are, it's like a stationary hydraulic lifter basically that rides under the followers. So, but normally in my experience, though, lifters, any kind of hydraulic lash adjuster slash lifter, usually takes about 30 seconds to a minute to pump up, and then the ticking goes away. Well, it did not go away on my car, and it only got worse when it got hot. So I drove it around for about 5 to 10 miles, didn't go away. Let it idle for probably about an hour, didn't go away. And I'm thinking, okay, something's off here. So then I called, I'm thinking it's either I got a bad lifter or somehow I have piston to valve interference. It's got to be one of those two because I didn't do anything on the bottom end. It was timing chains, camshafts, and you can see I put an intake in there, of course, but that was it. So I call Comp and I ask them, what is the likelihood that I have piston to valve interference? And they say almost none. 1 in 1,000 or more chance you have piston to valve interference. You probably got a collapsed lifter or something. So I pull a valve cover. Well, no, before I pulled the valve cover off, I was like, I'm just going to eliminate piston to valve interference. Just make sure that's not it. Well, I bore scope the passenger side bank, and I have exhaust valve hits on every cylinder. It's the worst on the number 1 cylinder, and then 2, 3. I don't think I even bore scope number 4 because I was just like, it's gonna be hit, obviously, because all the other ones were. It didn't matter at that point. But before I did that, I put a stethoscope on all over the engine, and it was noisiest on the exhaust manifold and right up at the top at the front of the cylinder head, right in here. No noise on the driver's side, just the passenger side. So then I bore scoped it, then I found that, and I was like, okay, I've got valves hitting here. And prior to this, I had looked into degreeing the cams, and I was like, that's a whole lot of stuff I really don't want to go through. It's going to be a pain in the ass to do it with the engine in the car. I got to buy all these $300 worth of tools and adjustable sprocket and all that, and I just did not want to go through it. So, everybody on the internet said, yeah, forums are a dangerous place. Everybody on the forum said, throw the cams in, you won't have a problem. And one of the things that Comp told me was that if you do have piston to valve interference, you got to degree the cams. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I've got valves hitting the pistons. I'm either going to have to pull the engine out to degree it, or if somehow I can degree it with it in the car, because all the tools that you got to mount are like, there's not a lot of space in here to mount all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, what are my options? My options are either degree it, go through that painstaking process, or let the valves pound their own release into the pistons eventually. Or I can take the valve cover off and try to rock that sprocket on the keyway just a hair. So I pulled the valve cover off. I looked at it and I was like, man, I pulled the bolt off of the cam sprocket and I was like, man, there is not much movement on this at all. I don't think it's going to be enough. And I don't remember which way I rocked it. I think it was advanced because the piston was hitting the valve as it was coming up. It was the exhaust valve. Right before the exhaust valve closed and the piston was at the top, it would hit. I had my bore scope in there while I was rotating the crankshaft over, and I could see like that's where it would hit. So if you advanced it, the intake valve would be opening sooner and the exhaust valve would be closing sooner, I believe. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on there. I could be dyslexic with that. So I believe I rocked it as far advanced as it would go, which was like maybe 0.02 of an inch, and ran the bolt back down, retorqued it, started it up, and that noise was gone completely. It was gone. And I mean, I was amazed that rocking 0.02 of an inch on that, I guess that's bank one. Ford cylinder numberings are weird. Bank one camshaft sprocket, like that was enough to get the valves to not interfere anymore. So definitely degreeing the cams is something that will stop the piston to valve interference. It was either that or, well, one of the other things I thought about doing was taking the head off and grinding reliefs into the piston where the valves had hit. That would have been another option. So then I remembered back when I was reading up on all these cams that there's almost every, well, I wouldn't say almost every, but there were a lot of cases where the Crown Vic guys is a lot of crownvic.net forums were saying, yeah, after I did these cams, it took forever for the ticking noise to go away. Yeah, I had to idle it for a long time. I had to rev it up a lot. There were even some guys saying they had to drive the car on the highway for over an hour. And I'm thinking, okay, lifters usually only take about 30 seconds to pump up. I've never seen lifters take longer than a minute, usually 30 seconds. So I'm thinking that there's a big misunderstanding on these forums where people are thinking that they've got lifter noise after they do these cams, but really they have very mild piston to valve interference, and it's just taking a while for those valves to pound their own reliefs into the pistons until the noise goes away. So, I mean, that's, I can't confirm that, but based on what I know, based on my experience, like, that's got to be it, because these lifters never take that long to pump up. So if you are thinking about, and it takes such little bit to make that piston to valve interference go away. Like, I literally rocked that camshaft sprocket like 0.02 of an inch was the only play that it had on the cam sprocket keyway. Like, that was it. But that was enough to make the valve interference go away. So beware, if you are putting cams in your 4.6 mod motor, you need to degree them. Or you can go through what I did, let the valves hit the pistons, try to rock the cam on the keyway. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I'm pretty sure I just got really fucking lucky. Cams do technically need to be degreed anyway to get the most performance out of them, but I mean, look, this is my 200,000 plus daily driver. Like, it's going to be diminishing returns at some point. I didn't care. I was in there to do timing chains, and I just wanted to throw some cams in there while I already had it apart, because I always wanted to do it. So to me, going through the process of degreeing it and buying all the tools, like, wasn't worth it. If I had known beforehand, I would have done it, just to do it properly, so I wouldn't have to deal with frickin' pistons hitting the valves. But here we are, and either take it back apart or do what I did. So, if I really, and this seems, from what somebody said, it was mostly a comp cam issue. They really didn't see a lot of interference on like the Crower or the Thumper cams, I think. I mean, yeah, I'm just vaguely thinking back. But people were mainly seeing piston to valve interference on the mod motors with the comp cams. So really, if you're going to do cams on your mod motor, like this is definitely something to be aware of. You really need to watch out for this. Really really consider degreeing them. A lot of people were saying they didn't have any issue, but then there were a lot of cases where people were like, "Yeah, the ticking noise took forever to go away." I think, and they're thinking it's just the lifters, but based on what I'm seeing now, I think it's mild piston to valve interference. So just be aware of that if you're thinking about putting comp cams in your mod motor. Now, the guy at Comps told me that the XE262AH, because of the grind of the cam, was actually more likely to interfere than like something more aggressive like an XE270, because the 262 has the same lift as the factory cams, but has a longer duration. And the XE270, I believe, had higher lift, still more duration than the factory, but not as much duration as the 262. And as I saw when I was cranking the motor over and the exhaust valve was coming back up, it is the duration that causes it, because all it took was me moving that cam sprocket just a little bit to make it close a little bit sooner, and then that was it. It wouldn't hit anymore. So something to be aware of. And also I put a Trick Flow 75 millimeter throttle body. It's a 75 millimeter or intake plenum, 75 millimeter Mustang throttle body I got off of eBay. I think it was a Chinese made one. And then I did the Spectre 9732 intake mod, where you take your mass airflow housing off of the factory air box, cut and grind it so it'll fit on the filter, and then just pop it onto your factory air tube. And I think it really needs it with the cams, because there was like a dead spot under load in a couple of areas with the new cams. But once I put that intake on, that dead spot went away. So I really think the new cams need a bigger intake. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it.